You're about to hear a number so insane it sounds like a typo. Every single day, while you're sleeping, eating breakfast, or sitting in traffic on the I-405, a company you think you know prints over $700 million. Not revenue. Not monopoly money. Cold, hard, American cash. But here's the kicker, the man who made it all possible. He landed in this country with absolutely nothing. No money. No connections. No degree. And for years, he was a ghost, invisible to Silicon Valley. So how did a broke immigrant go from sleeping on a basement floor to building the hidden engine that powers almost every single American family's daily life? Stick with me for the next few minutes, because this isn't a story about computers. It's a story about hunger, humiliation, and the one bet that made Google the most profitable machine in human history. Welcome back to Brand Story Lab. Today, we're peeling back the logo, the colorful letters, and the cute doodles. We're talking about the man you've never seen in the ads. The man who doesn't want a trophy. The man who owns more of the internet than you probably own of your own house. And the wild part? He failed first. Hard. Let's rewind to 1990. A 27-year-old man named Sundar Pichai is still finishing school in India. No, wait, wrong guy. Let's go further back. 1980, a young, scrawny computer scientist from Germany named Berthold. No. That's not right either. The man we're after actually starts in Russia. His name is Sergey Brin. But his father, Michael Brin, was a mathematician in the Soviet Union. And if you lived in the Soviet Union as a Jew in the 1970s, the government basically told you, you will never be great here. So Michael did something terrifying. He packed up his 6-year-old son Sergey, his wife, and a single suitcase, and he said goodbye to everything. They landed in the United States with almost nothing. No family fortune. No tech connections. Just a fierce, desperate belief that America still rewarded crazy ideas. Young Sergey didn't speak perfect English. He was awkward, nerdy, and way too honest for his own good. But he had one superpower: he could see patterns in data that other people literally could not see. Fast forward to Stanford University, 1995. Sergey is a grad student, and he's bored. Bored with the way search engines worked. Back then, if you typed a question into AltaVista or Yahoo, you got a messy pile of links. It was like asking a librarian who's blindfolded to find a needle in a haystack. Sergey thought, what if we could rank websites by how many other websites trusted them? Think about that. He basically invented popularity contests for the internet. And he didn't do it alone. He met a kid named Larry Page, and together, they built a clunky, ugly algorithm they called Backrub. Yes, Backrub. It sounded like a massage. Nobody took them seriously. But here's the first major stake of our story. In 1998, they ran out of money. They were living off credit cards. Their servers, which were just cheap computer parts stacked in wooden cases, were about to melt. They tried to sell their search engine to Excite for $1 million. $1 million. That's a studio apartment in Manhattan today. And Excite's CEO laughed at them. He said, "Your thing is too accurate. People won't want to leave our site." So Sergey and Larry were broke, rejected, and sleeping in their office on campus. They stole food from the dorm cafeteria. This is not a Silicon Valley fairy tale. This is two guys on the verge of giving up. But then something happened. Andy Bechtolsheim, a co-founder of Sun Microsystems, saw a demo of their search engine. He didn't even wait for them to finish. He wrote a check for $100,000. But here's the punchline, he wrote it out to Google Incorporated. The only problem? Google Incorporated didn't exist yet. They hadn't even incorporated. Sergey had to run to a bank and open an account with a check that was technically invalid. That's how fragile the entire empire was. So, They incorporated in a Menlo Park garage. You've heard the garage myth 1,000 times. But what they don't tell you is that Sergey Brin wasn't the charismatic CEO type. He was the grumpy, brilliant, no-bullshit engineer who wore rollerblades in the hallway and argued about trivial details for hours. While Larry Page handled the big vision, Sergey obsessed over data. He asked, how do we make money without making our search results evil? And that question nearly destroyed them. Because in the early 2000s, Google was growing, but it was burning cash like crazy. They had millions of users and $0 in profit. Investors were getting nervous. One board member famously said, "You have a rocket ship with no engines." Then came the bet that changed everything. 2003, a tiny company called Applied Semantics had a weird technology for matching ads to content. Sergey saw it and said, "This is it." He didn't want banner ads. He didn't want flashing pop-ups. He wanted small text ads that looked like search results, but only showed up if they were actually useful to you. Everyone told him it was stupid. People will ignore text ads, they said. You're leaving billions on the table. Sergey didn't care. He pushed through AdWords, then AdSense. And within 18 months, Google went from losing money to printing cash. In 2004, they went public. Sergey Brin, the immigrant kid who couldn't speak English well, was suddenly worth billions. But here's where most storytellers stop. They show you the happy ending. The IPO. The stock options. The Googleplex with free gourmet food and nap pods. That's not the real story. The real story is what Sergey did next, and why Google now makes over $700 million every single day. Let me break that number down for you. $700 million per day. That's about $8,100 per second. By the time you finish this sentence, Google's servers will have generated enough cash to buy a brand new Honda Civic. In 1 minute, they make almost $500,000. In 1 hour, 29 million. In 1 day, they could buy every single house in a small American town like Kearney, Nebraska. Twice. And the craziest part? Most of that money doesn't come from you typing a search. It doesn't come from Gmail or Google Maps. It comes from a hidden layer of the economy that you never see. It's called the Google Display Network, and it's basically a giant slot machine in the sky. Every time you visit a news site, a blog, a recipe page, or a YouTube video, there's an auction happening in less than 100 milliseconds. Advertisers bid for the chance to show you something. And Sergey Brin's original algorithm decides who wins. Not based on who pays the most, but based on who is most relevant to you. That's the secret sauce. That's why American families don't hate Google ads the way they hate TV commercials. Because the ads feel like help, not interruptions. But let's get personal for a second. Think about the average American household. Mom is searching for best car seat for toddlers at 10 p.m. on her phone. Dad is watching a DIY video on how to fix a leaking faucet. Their teenage daughter is comparing Nike versus Adidas sneakers on YouTube. Google is watching all of it. Not in a creepy, we know your social security number way, but in a mathematical, pattern recognition way. They connect the dots. They serve a car seat ad to mom, a Home Depot ad to dad, and a discount code for sneakers to the teenager. And every single one of those clicks costs the advertiser money. That money flows straight into Google's bank account. This is not a conspiracy. This is the most elegant business machine ever built. And the engineer who designed the core of that machine? Sergey Brin. He didn't want to be the face of Google. He stepped back from day-to-day operations years ago. He let Sundar Pichai take the spotlight. He let Eric Schmidt pretend to be the adult in the room. But every major technical decision that made Google a money-printing volcano came from Sergey's obsession with data and his immigrant fear of wasting a single opportunity. You want stakes? Here they are. In 2015, Google restructured into Alphabet. Wall Street analysts panicked. They said, "You're spending billions on self-driving cars and internet balloons and a company that wants to cure death. This is going to bankrupt you." Sergey didn't blink. He knew something the analysts didn't. He knew that Google's core cache machine, search and ads, was so profitable, so deeply embedded in American life, that it could fund 10 crazy moonshots and still have money left over. And he was right. In 2023, Google's parent company Alphabet made over $73 billion in net profit. That's more than the entire GDP of some countries. And what does Sergey do with his share? He flies under the radar. He funds research into Parkinson's disease. He gives hundreds of millions to charitable foundations. He lives in a nice house in Los Altos, but he still drives a Toyota Prius. That's not a humble brag. That's a guy who remembers what it felt like to have nothing. But here's the twist that most documentaries miss. Sergey Brin is not a hero in the traditional sense. He's also not a villain. He's something much more interesting. He's a mirror. Because the same algorithm that helps a single mom find a cheap flight to see her parents also helps a political extremist find an echo chamber. The same ad auction that helps a local bakery in Ohio grow its business also helps a shady supplement company scam senior citizens. Sergey knew this. He famously argued inside Google that we should not be the moral arbiters of the internet. He wanted the algorithm to be pure math. But math doesn't have a conscience. And that tension, between pure information and human consequences, is why Google is both loved and feared. It's why a 2024 survey found that 81% of American families trust Google's search results, but only 32% trust the company to protect their privacy. That gap is Sergey's legacy. He built a machine so good at giving us what we want that we forget to ask whether we should want it in the first place. Let's zoom out. Why does this story matter to you, right now, sitting in your living room or watching on your phone during lunch break? Because we live in an era where every American family feels like the system is rigged. The housing market is insane. College tuition is a joke. Wages feel stuck. But here's a guy who landed with nothing, spoke English with a thick accent, had zero pedigree, and he built a $900 billion company by solving one stupid, simple problem: how to find stuff on the internet. That means the American dream isn't dead. It's just hiding in plain sight, inside problems that everyone else has given up on. The question isn't, can you do what Sergey did? The question is, what boring, overlooked problem in your own life is worth obsessing over for 10 years? Because that's the real lesson. Sergey Brin didn't invent the internet. He didn't invent search. He just made it less annoying. He made it faster. He made it smarter. And then he figured out how to get paid without making you feel dirty. That's the blueprint for every single successful business in America. Solve a headache. Charge less than the pain. And never, ever stop optimizing. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But the channel is called Brand Story Lab. You're supposed to talk about branding, not just a guy's biography. Fair point. So let's talk about the invisible brand that Sergey built. Most people think Google's brand is the colorful logo or the clean white homepage. Wrong. Google's brand is speed. It's the promise that you will get your answer in less than half a second. Every time you see that little spinning bee, you feel a tiny spike of anxiety. That's not an accident. That's a brand promise delivered through engineering. Sergey personally obsessed over page load times. He once told a team that if a search result took more than 400 milliseconds, it was a failure. He didn't care about marketing slogans. He cared about microseconds. And that obsession created a brand so powerful that Google became a verb. You don't search for something anymore. You Google it. That's the holy grail of branding. And you can steal that lesson for your own small business or YouTube channel. Don't worry about your logo. Worry about the one thing you do faster, better, or cheaper than anyone else. Do that for 10 years, and you won't need a billboard. Customers will become your billboard. Before we wrap up, let's talk about the one thing Sergey Brin regrets. In a rare interview from 2018, he admitted that Google was too naive about the negative consequences of its algorithms. He specifically mentioned the spread of misinformation and the way YouTube's recommendation engine could radicalize people. That's a heavy admission from a guy who usually talks like a robot. It means that even geniuses make mistakes. Even billionaires have sleepless nights. And the reason I'm telling you this is not to tear Sergey down. It's to show you that success doesn't mean perfection. Google makes billions every single day, and yet its founders still lie awake wondering if they made the world better or worse. That's the human cost of building something massive. You don't get to dodge that. Neither does Sergey. Neither do you, if you ever build something that scales. So here's where we land. Sergey Brin came to America with a single suitcase and a brain that wouldn't shut up. He failed. He got laughed at. He ate ramen in a dorm room. And today, the company he co-founded makes more money every 24 hours than most of us will see in a lifetime. But the money isn't the point. The point is that he saw a gap. A tiny, annoying gap between what people wanted and what technology delivered. And he filled that gap with math, stubbornness, and a complete disregard for what other people thought was possible. That's the American story. It's not about luck. It's about seeing a crack in the sidewalk and deciding to build a highway. Now, I want to hear from you. Think about your daily life. What's one search or one app or one service that feels just slightly broken? Something that makes you sigh every time you use it? Write it in the comments. Because that sigh. That's your billion-dollar idea. That's your Sergey Brin moment. Don't ignore it. If you made it to the end of this video, you're exactly the kind of curious, hungry person we make these deep dives for a grand story lab. Hit that like button if you want more stories about the hidden giants who actually run the world. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because next week we're uncovering the bizarre true story of the man who accidentally invented the most hated sound on the internet, and got paid millions for it. Until then, remember, every empire started with a problem nobody else wanted to solve. Go find yours. I'll see you in the next one.